Hi Book Dragons! I didn't wind up doing a ton of reading in the early part of November, but I feel like I'm definitely on a reading roll, so I am going to wrap up the 6 books that I read in the first half of the month, roughly. I'm just counting everything that I read up until the day that I came home from Y'all Fest, so it is maybe like a little bit off, but I did wind up reading 6 books in that month, and I'm a stats girl, so if you don't like stats, you could go ahead and not watch this part, but I find stats interesting. So far I've read 6 books. I read 2,227 pages. I read, on average, 74 pages a day. I definitely read more on the weekends. Like, that's just like a natural fact. Average page count is 371, which is a little bit elevated. I did read some longer fantasy books. My most read genre is fantasy, which is exciting because I definitely have had some struggles with some audiobooks lately. My most read genre is fantasy, which I love. I read 3 books with Rep, 2 from authors I read before, and 0 books hauled because I'm just not tracking that right now, honestly. I read 1 5-star, I read 1 4-star, 1 3.5 star, and that is it. For an average rating of 3.17. I read 5 new releases, 1 backlist, and then I read 2 physical, 3 audio, and 0 mixed media, and 1 ebook. And then series, I started 1 series, and I read 5 standalones and 1 companion, and I read 4 young adult and 1, I think it's 2 young adult. I don't know why new adult isn't there, but that's fine. And then I read 0 arcs. I read 1 from the library, 1 from NetGalley, 3 owned, and 1 from Everand or Spotify. I read 2 fantasy, 1 paranormal romance, 1 nonfiction, 1 thriller, and 1 romance. And yeah, those are my stats. So we are going to go through these rather quickly so I can get to reading this weekend because it's a weekend. The first book that I read was A Curious Kind of Magic by Mara Rutherford. I haven't actually read anything by this author before, and I really like this book. I was a little bit nervous going in because I didn't love Little Thieves, and I actually DNF'd Howl's Moving Castle, but I love this book. I gave this book 5 stars. It was like a light, cozy fantasy about a main character who is kind of a charlatan. She kind of runs a curiosity shop that has no magical things. And then a character goes in there, this new girl she meets, Brianna. Brianna's kind of activating the things in her shop, and they have to kind of team up to kind of save her shop. And there's a romance in here. I'm not going to spoil who the romance is with, but it's a very, very fun, cozy read. Very, very atmospheric, very, very light fall, and I had a fun time with it, and I gave it 5 stars. I did like the unexpected romance in here. I don't think it went the way I was expecting, but it definitely has 3 main characters in this story. You have Willow, you have Brianna, and Brianna's best friend, who's a boy, and I just had a fun time with this. It was very light. It was plot in a way that I like, cozy fantasy. I think this book had a plot that kept me engaged and kept me interested, which I did like. Gave this book 5 stars, and I really want to go back and read more by this author, so I'm happy that I picked this one up. Surprisingly, I actually like this edition better than my special edition, so I'm probably just going to keep this and get rid of my special edition because I like this one a little bit better. And then the next book I read was, I've really been struggling with audiobooks. I have since then have had some winners, but I have been struggling. So I've read Witches of Dubious Origin by Jen McKinley. I will touch a photo. Witchy paranormal romance about a main character who's working in a small town. Her grandma recently died, and she's kind of clued in that she's a witch and she has these powers. And it kind of goes from there. This book is not really memorable. I think I felt a little bit disconnected from the characters, and it really became a more passive listen, which means I really wasn't engaged in the story. I really don't know how I like to listen to my witchy romances, if I like to read them or if I like to listen to them. I guess that sort of depends on how much world building there was, and I just think maybe I should have swapped and physically read this, but you never know until you read it, and I had it on Spotify and was going to finish it. But it wasn't like a very, very memorable read, and I have read stuff by Jen McKinley before and have liked it, so I don't know. But this book was not my favorite, and I only gave it 3 stars. So that is it. And the next book I read was nonfiction. I read Sitting with Dogs by Rocky Kanaka. I will touch a photo of that book here. Really trying to remember to read my nonfiction every month, and this was a book that I have wanted to read. I have followed Rocky on his YouTube channel. Sorry, my mom is sneezing. Sorry if you hear that, I apologize. But this is a nonfiction book about his YouTube channel and how his YouTube got charted, about how he sits with dogs in shelters. And I love this book. This was like a super, super quick lesson, but it was just very enjoyable. I learned a lot about him and his wife and how they kind of developed this sitting with dogs series. It was fun. It was a quick listen, and I do really, really like his YouTube channel. So yeah, that was fun. And the next book that I read was A Forgery of Fate by Elizabeth Lim. This is the start of my Goodreads Choice Award winners. This wound up being nominated like the day that I started reading it, and I finished this. I gave this book 4 stars. I really did like this book. This book was like a fun time. I think it's like a 4-star read. The same issue I had with Spin the Dawn. I think it's a very, very insular story, and I think that like you have to really, really love all the characters. And I like the characters. I enjoyed them, but I don't think that they were new favorites. The world was fun, but it's not super memorable. But I did tab the hell out of it, which is nice. So I did wind up liking that. I just didn't feel as connected to the overall world that I was hoping. But this follows, it's kind of like a retelling. This book follows a main character that is a con artist, another con artist. And she winds up having to go to marry a dragon, and things kind of go from there. And then she kind of gets sucked into his magical world. I liked it. It wasn't a new favorite. I did wind up giving this one 4 stars. And then I wound up my ebook I was reading because I knew I was going to be traveling was A Spell to Wake the Dead by Nicole Spirits. I will touch a photo of that here. YA witchy thriller with like cult vibes, and you kind of follow these 2 girls and their best friend as they kind of try to solve these murders that are happening in their town, and it gets very, very witchy. Light horror. I enjoyed it. I don't think it was super memorable, but the representation was interesting. I liked it. It was a quick read. I didn't have to think too much about it, but it was very, very atmospheric, and it worked for like a late autumn read. And I did like it. I just don't think it's going to be a new favorite. That's why it only got like 3 stars. And then the last book I read in this section was To Heaven to Heist by Sarah Desai. And this was one that was on my self-destruct books. And I wound up listening to it when I was traveling, and I had a fun time. It's very, very like an action adventure rom-com about these 2 characters that wound up teaming up to do a heist to save her best friend or her best friend's reputation. And it was fun. It's very, very found family focused. It was a quick listen when I was kind of running around getting all my author signatures. It was fun. I just don't think it's super memorable, and it's going to go back on my Pango shelf. But yeah, that's what I did. Honestly, it has been a very, very stressful month with grading and stuff like that, and it's just not, things have not gone according to plan. So I've really been watching a lot of The Hills and de-stressing, which has been nice. But yeah, so that is the plan. That is where we are. So I will give you guys an update at the end of the month, and hopefully I will have read a bunch more. That is the plan. So yeah, I will talk to you guys soon. Bye, book friends.